Hello, everyone. This is Sue Tetzloff, co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions. Glad to be with you live today on the topic of coach and never stop coaching. And I started this topic, introduced it, teed it up last week, really focusing on this idea that as leaders, one of our major responsibilities is to coach and never stop coaching. We love the book, The Better People Leader by Charles Coonrant. Maybe you've read it yourself. And in there, he talks about cut out the cancer, coach who you keep, and never stop coaching. And that just resonates with us. We so believe it. 25 plus years of leadership experience. And I reflect on that. And wow, that is just great advice to live by, is coach and never stop coaching. So what does that look like? Now, last week we talked about how you can use direct dialogue. We teach this feedback, 3 feedback conversations: compliment, coach, and correct. And these conversations can be used in that day-to-day feedback that coaches, but also there's some more formal kind of feedback coaching conversations that are key to this, the tactics of coach and never stop coaching. And so I really want to focus on kind of that powerhouse conversation that is kind of like really needed in every leader's toolkit, so that they have something, something that they know that works, that they can rely on to use to initiate positive coaching, because coaching is positive. So we speak to keeping this 3-to-1 ratio, 3 times more positive conversations to everyone that's not, to create this, positive relationship and positive culture where people and results can flourish. So we really believe that the compliment conversation and coaching conversation is, 2 key conversations on that 3 side, that positive side of communication and feedback to everyone that's not. And a correction conversation, or even modifying that to a call out, may not be, perceived as positive, maybe corrective or constructive, but those are necessary too, right? So we can't not do those either. But today's focus is really going to be on that spirit of coaching that we teed up last week, which is that if we really put out there to everyone that we believe that everyone has an opportunity to always be growing and developing, and that we're one of those departments or divisions or organizations that truly believes that, we set high standards for how people behave and perform and contribute, and that we're always coaching everyone, and that we all have opportunities, everyone continue to go up and up and up as individuals, and then collectively as a team, right? And so that powerhouse conversation that really is more of that formal conversation for, living that spirit of coaching is something that we call a coaching conversation. And it's positive coaching. And it has 3 main components: build up, coach up, support up. But to do those 3 components well, then there's also a open the conversation well, open up well, and then button up the conversation well too. So you might want to say there's 5 key components: open up, build up, coach up, support up, button up. Okay, so there you go. There's the key pieces. So I'm going to go through these so that you kind of get really an understanding of this formula of how to initiate coaching. So let's go back to, before I can package this into this is how you, go about delivering a conversation that is positive coaching in this type of format. I want to kind of, tee up this idea that, when you're an organization that wants to be great, having those standards for how everyone behaves and performs is really, really important, that those are known and those are clear. Just as it's clear that we have the spirit of coaching, it's clear that we have these high standards that we're all striving for. So as you're trying to get, elevate everyone's behavior and performance to those high standards, is that there's going to be tactics to bring that information out to everyone, to clarify those standards, to remind them of those standards, to keep them top of mind. So you're bringing out all of this stuff kind of all of the time. So, keeping behavior standards alive, maybe once a month at every staff meeting, maybe every day at a huddle, you're bringing a standard alive and keeping it top of mind, let's commit to this standard today. Let's talk about living this standard to a higher level today, this week, this month, or whatever. So there's, those kind of tactics. But sometimes those can be impactful in a way, and they're necessary, those kind of conversations to everyone as reminders and top of mind kind of tactics. But to really get behavior change or performance change in an individual, we often need to take that private. We need to take that one-on-one most powerful conversation around whatever standard it is that is their opportunity to improve. We need to take that personal, because one-on-one conversations are the most powerful and impactful conversations. When we speak to the group, our whole department, our whole team, our whole organization about, living a certain standard, people, take that message in differently than if I was talking to you one-on-one about your specific opportunity to live that standard to a higher level. So it takes both, right? And it takes that day-to-day feedback when you see people living the standard, complimenting them in the moment, or calling them out in the moment when it's not happening, with all of these standards. But when it comes to this powerful one-on-one conversation, it can't be about everything. It can't be about all standards, okay? So in the group, we might talk about many things, but when we get private in this one-on-one, we need to get specific to the individual and the specific behavior or job task performance that's their opportunity to grow and develop. So I really wanted to, set this clear that there's this opportunity to kind of bring it out to everyone, all standards, many standards, often. But this is about that purposeful, impactful coaching, where we say coach and never stop coaching. And we live that spirit of a leader's commitment to growing their people, okay? So when you go into it with that kind of understanding and mindset and intent, then you can execute this formula of this conversation very, very well. So again, there is the open up well, there's the build up, the coach up, the support up, and then the button up or close up well. Okay, so we're going to go through that. So the open up this conversation well usually includes a few key talking points. The first one being to connect the individual back to the spirit of coaching. So open the conversation very positive, because this is a positive conversation, and remind them of the positive intent, that we're an organization that is committed to always getting better. And this is our conversation where we get to talk personally about that and your current opportunity or your next opportunity, and my commitment to you as a leader to commit to you in this growth, okay? So that's usually how you open up well. Number two, a way to open up well is to tee up the outline of the conversation. So you might want to say, there's three main components to our conversation here today. It's going to be, build up, where I'm going to talk about your strengths. It's going to be coach up. We're going to talk about what is that next coaching opportunity and opportunity for growth. And then that support up, where I'm going to really understand what it is I can do to support you on your way to getting at this next coaching need. And then we'll just button up the conversation well to make sure we're all clear on what happened today, what was discussed today, and what the next steps are. So when you open that up at the start of the conversation, that really helps you as the leader to make sure that there's clear understanding about the conversation from both sides, that it shows you're prepared, that you just didn't come in winging this, that you took this seriously, that you prepared, and that you have, an outline and you prepared for this and given this some thought. And that shows your commitment to them, that you care and that you are committed to this process and this spirit of coaching. Also, what it does is a couple other things. One is it commits you as a leader to follow through on this conversation. Sometimes when I've been coaching leaders, and I was a leader of leaders for more than, a couple decades, where I was a senior leader. So I was always coaching leaders as well to have these conversations. And sometimes they'd, be prepared. We would get them ready to have these conversations. They'd come back and say, how did it go? And they're like, I didn't get through it. I stopped after the build up and I didn't get to the coach up piece. I just didn't didn't follow through. I wasn't able to execute on the conversation. But if you bring it out right at the front of the conversation that says, we're going to go from build up, where we're going to talk about some strengths and positives about your behavior and your performance, and we're going to move into that coaching opportunity that's next for you. If you tee that up, and then you try to exit the conversation without going there, the employee might even say to you, wait a minute, I thought you said we were going to talk about what's next for me, and we haven't talked about that yet. So let's go there. So it kind of commits you to the conversation by teeing it up right from the start. And I find that tactic works. Also, what it does is it allows you to keep the positive conversation going, that the spirit of this is positive. It's not what's wrong with you and I'm going to help you fix it. It's, we're all going to grow and develop. And so when you move from building somebody up, talking about their strengths, and then you're moving into that coaching opportunity of what's next for them to grow and develop, sometimes it feels like you hit a speed bump. Well, here's what you're good at, and now let's talk about, where your opportunity lies for improvement. So when you're making that transition, it can feel like, you're good at this, but, and that doesn't keep the tone and the spirit of the conversation positive. So if you announce it in the beginning that we're going to do this build up, coach up, support up, outline, and you introduce that right from the start. And if you're an organization that coaches and always coaches, right, your employees will get as used to this conversation and the outline as you do, right? So if you announce that, it allows you to move through the conversation in a way where you can say, okay, now that we've had this opportunity where I could really celebrate and speak to your strengths and your successes, it's time to, talk about what's next as far as growth and development and that coaching need. And so it allows you to say, now it's time to move on in the conversation to that, versus it feeling like, you're great at this, but. So I really recommend that you open up well that way. The other thing to do in the open up is to engage the employee to actually document the conversation. And so I prepare by having, paper and pen there. Some departments or organizations use a formal coaching note outline of sorts. But basically you want the employee to own this, right? That you may be helping them, you may be supporting them as their leader, but it's their growth and development, right? And so this is a way to bring that ownership to them, is to have them really kind of be a different kind of participant in the conversation by documenting it. So that especially when you move into the coaching piece, that they're creating their coaching plan. You're not, okay? So engage them. And I really thank a mentor in my life, somebody that I met in these last years, Terry Potter, who was a great CEO leader in healthcare for many, many years in the Midwest, retired, has done some, interim work, and we cross paths. And I really appreciate for him, bringing this kind of idea to my attention to say, hey, engage the employee to document this conversation and own it in that way. Because before that, what I would recommend was that at the end of this conversation, that you as the leader would send an email or some sort of communication to the employee saying, per our conversation today, and then I would highlight, the talking points in writing of what we had talked about verbally, and then ended it with, if any of this doesn't sound like what we talked about, please get back with me so that we can get on the same page about this. So, Terry's advice was turn that around, have the employee document it, right? Let them write it. And then what they do is send it to you as a leader and say, hey, this is what I took away from our conversation. This is, what we prioritized as my next growth and development opportunity, and here's the start of our plan for, what I'm going to do, what you're going to do, et cetera, to make this happen, and let the employee own it in that way. And I will tell you that since learning that and now applying that and coaching that and training leaders to do that, it's absolutely right. Terry said, why did you do all the heavy lifting on that? And I did that for decades, right? And so now there's this new ownership, and actually there's really good feedback about the engagement of the employee in these conversations, and almost it feeling more positive to them because they feel that sense of ownership, and that it really is a partnership between you and them for their growth and development. And that feels really, really good. I used to be on the receiving end of these conversations when I was still working as a leader, because in the organization where I worked, this is what we did. You know, we had these conversations. And so I would give these conversations, but I was also an employee on the receiving end of these. And, you know, I had to tell you that it felt good to be engaged in this way with my leader, that he cared about me enough to always say, what's next for Sue, for her to grow and develop. So that's the open up well, is to remind them of the positive spirit of coaching and that your commitment to that, the outline for the conversation, and then engage them in actually documenting and recording kind of the key points and takeaways from the conversation from their point of view, because it is really about them. Right? This conversation is about them. So then you move into the build-up, and the build-up is where you can compliment the employee for their strengths. And I used to always like to, especially if there was prior coaching that I had done with them and they had mastered those things, I would often like to connect back to that, to just remind them that, you know, we've committed to this, you know, time and time again, to coach and never stop coaching, to always be growing and developing. And because of that, you know, I see their strengths and their growths for these things that they've mastered, and that I know that they're going to master this next thing too. Also, another thing you can do, because you can't, you know, spend all your time here on building them up, but you should think about those key things. Some of them being very specific behaviors or contributions that they've made to your team, to the work that they do, or whatever. But some of them can be about kind of their attributes, you know, their dependability, or, you know, some of those things too. So it could be some of that's appreciation and recognition. And in some of these videos, we talk about the difference between the two. So think about appreciation and recognition. Recognize very specific behaviors or performance, and then appreciate, you know, attributes, and bring those forward. But I also like to think about what are the strengths that they have that are going to help them through this next coaching need, right? So maybe they're a person that really is committed to excellence, right? And that's an attribute. So when you move into that coaching part and you talk about what's next for them, you can connect what is a strength and an attribute in them to, you know, what's next for them. And it will help them connect the dots between, I've got this, right? I might have this growth need, but I've got it because I've got these strengths that are going to help me do it. So I challenge leaders when they're preparing this conversation to really put some thought into that build-up piece. I don't think we should just, you know, be soft on that, or not give that enough pause and intention about what we want to say to them about their strengths and what it might mean for what's next for them. But really the meat of this conversation is the coach up piece, okay? And so the coach up piece, to prepare for this as the leader, this is our recommendation, is that you as the leader, because you know your people as individuals, you know your goals as a department and as an organization, and you know your standards for how people, you know, job task performance, job functions, behaviors, etc. Because you know all of this as the leader, because we got to know a lot, right? Since we have this knowledge of our individual employees, our standards, and our job task performance, etc., because we know this, we should pick the priority coaching need for each one of our employees that we're going to commit to in this conversation. So we should go into this conversation selecting what one thing are we going to commit to coaching them on. Where is their biggest priority growth need? Okay. And so some people might say, you know, it's more engaging if you let the employee pick it. Let the employee pick it. But I will tell you that that can backfire on you. And we've been doing this and coaching this and, you know, debriefing from these conversations and monitoring these for years. And what will happen is, if you know, you let the employee pick what's this coaching need, they might pick something that's not the biggest priority need. And as a leader, if you're going to commit to coaching, that takes time, energy, and focus. And if we want each individual to elevate and collectively the organization elevate, there has to be some thought into what are we committing to here? What are we going to give our time and attention to? So that, because time is not unlimited, right? We only have a limited amount of time to coach, that we need to commit to the highest priority thing. And I think, again, this can be positive to the employee, that you as the leader have given thought to this and you care enough about them as individuals and collectively the team to pick what is that one priority thing where you're going to coach and never stop coaching, right? So, and then once they master that, then you move on to the next thing and the next, because you're never going to stop coaching. But it's only one thing at a time. So it's kind of like serial coaching, right? So it's a series of coaching. We pick that one priority need that is today, that priority, and we commit to coaching. And so this is that part of the conversation where you share with the employee that you've picked X as the priority area for growth and development that you'd like to commit to and engage them in. And you have to be able to share why you selected it, right? Why is it the biggest priority? And again, this can feel positive that, you know, a leader takes this time and energy to put a lot of thought into this, right? And that's how it felt when my leader would meet with me during these coaching conversations. Was he really put thought into this. He really cares enough to watch, to know me, to know the next opportunity for me. And that he, even, you know, no matter how top I get in my job and in my performance and in my behavior, that he's always watching what's next for me, so that I'm always getting better, always getting better. And he always had good reason for why he picked that next thing. So while it might seem, you know, negative, and you could, you know, think about it that way, that it wouldn't be as engaging, think about the positive of this, that your boss cares this much about you to really give thought to this and to know you, know the organization, know the department, know the goals, know the standards, know your individual behavior and performance, and snap, they can pick that one priority next thing. Because let's say you have 2 employees, you got some time invested in coaching 2 employees to these 2 next things, like each of them to their one. But if you have 50 employees, right, you can't coach them to 10 things each. So you got to go after that high priority thing. Go after it. Now, like we say with a lot of things, narrow the focus and go miles towards that one most important thing versus millimeters towards many. So we apply that same narrow the concept focus so that we can go miles towards this one coaching opportunity and nail it, right? And go far with it. And then we move on to the next thing. And then we move on to the next thing, because we're going to coach and never stop coaching. So the real part for you to prepare for this part of the conversation is to really just talk about why you selected that, and be able to engage in conversation about, you know, the collective agreement, bring us on the same page about why this is the next thing for them. And then that next piece of this coach up part is really the employee taking the reins of this conversation. This is dialogue. This is, you know, real engaged conversation where, you know, you say, okay, so now that we've you know, committed to this, what's the plan? What do you think is going to work for you, right? And so as the leader, your job isn't to go into this positive coaching conversation with the plan for them. This is an engaging process during this part of the conversation to build that plan together. What do you think will work for you? So maybe it's a knowledge deficit or a skill deficit. Then you think, okay, how are they going to get that knowledge? How are they going to get practice with that skill? You know, and maybe they don't know. And so as a leader, you might say, hey, I see these as options, or these things have worked for others. What do you think might work for you? So this is where they take ownership of the plan, and you can help them, you can give them ideas, but do not come in and say, you know, this is where I see your growth need is, and this is how we're going to get at it. This is where you really engage them in this process of really owning the plan. And maybe you guys are stumped in this part of the conversation and they really don't know what would work best for them and they want to give it some thought. This isn't the only conversation you're going to have with them about this. This is that opening, initiating conversation, because you're going to have more conversations in follow-up to this door opening kind of initiating conversation. So maybe you just say, you know, let's both think about it, right? Maybe you want to go do a little search and look around or whatever. So you might part this conversation really thinking about, let's go give some thought to this and come back, next week at the same day and time and see what we both came up with, right? So we can keep moving forward. So this coach up, so sometimes you leave this part of the conversation with a very clear, these are the first 2 steps. I'm going to do this. You're going to do that. Let's go. And sometimes there's some thought and pause and some circling back to it that's needed to really come up with what's the plan for them. And so once you get through that part of the conversation, however far that goes, then you want to move into the next step, which is the support up talking point of this conversation. It gets, really close to kind of closing up the conversation, but doing it on a really positive note. So before you close up or button up the conversation, I like to, include this part called support up, which is where, we really show our commitment to our employee and their plan, or that pursuit of the plan, where we might say to them that thank them for their time, thank them for showing interest in the conversation, thank you for engaging, thank you, and then also I like to do that. I come up with my own words, you'll come up with yours, but something along the lines of, I do care about you. I am committed to you. And, under that spirit of growth and continued development, I believe in you. I'm here for you. I know you'll do your part and I'm here to do mine. Okay. So something like that really shows, again, your support for this growth and development in your employee. And then you move into buttoning up the conversation. And that usually is, when are we going to meet next on this? How often are we going to need to touch in on this? Maybe reaffirming what their next steps are and yours, reminding them to please put this conversation and this outline, their talking points, in writing and send that to you so you have record of it. And it is good to have record of it because, if positive coaching doesn't lead to the change that is necessary, then, it might move into some more formal sort of remediation or correction. But, it's not really often needed for that because positive coaching works a lot to get to the result. But let's say it's something really, really important. There's a skill base that's really important to their job and they've got to master this and they truly do need to grow in this area. It's really impactful if they don't. It may be that they can't even function in their job if they don't for long term. So, if they can't seem to master it with positive coaching, you might need to move into that 5-point correction conversation that gets into a formal performance improvement plan, maybe discipline, all of those things that get a little more formal than this. And that does remind me that, this positive coaching outline of build up, coach up, support up can be used probably in 90% or more of development kind of conversations or coaching conversations with employees that will get you the result of positive change in their behavior or performance. However, we have, another conversation that is the 5-point correction conversation that we coach to, and that is, more on that correction side, that one on the 3-to-1 ratio, that more negative perceived conversation. But if the development need, if the coaching need is something that's chronic, persistent, you've tried positive coaching in the past and it hasn't led to change, or you don't believe at all that positive coaching will work or work quick enough, you may need to go to that 5-point conversation, which is certainly a whole different type of conversation, and it's not positive coaching. But 90% of the time, positive coaching will work to elevate behavior and performance of an individual. And so it's a great tool for every leader to master. And it's a conversation that I've been using for years, coaching leaders to use for years with great success. Okay. Now that 5-point conversation works for when it needs to work, for those it needs to work with issues that need to be worked on differently. But this is truly the workhorse coaching conversation for that formal commitment to coaching of, performance management. How do you elevate behavior and performance of individuals? You got to have a tool, okay? So that day-to-day feedback is one tool. Compliment, call out, compliment, call out, giving people that instant feedback regarding all the standards. And then with this, what's that one commitment that you've made, which is their next priority thing for growth and commitment to growth. So this conversation is one we would encourage you all to master. And maybe just think about it today. Think about one employee where you can think of a clear and convincing coaching need. You know them. You know what your standards are for job task performance or for behavior, and you can think of one gap where this is their current level of behavior performance, this is the standard, and there's an opportunity for them to go higher, right? Maybe they're already at standard, but they can go higher, 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 okay? Novice to expert, what gets them closer to expert? But think about that. Think about one employee right now where you can think of one clear and convincing coaching need, and then think about developing this outline of open up the conversation well, build them up, talk about their strengths, engage them in coaching, and then, show your support for them, and then button up the conversation well with that commitment of what's next to keep coaching and never stop coaching until they master this. And then you start on the next thing. So, and if you're one of our partner organizations, you can know that, we do this in a mid-year conversation cycle, or mid-year of each performance year or goal cycle in a year. Every employee has this powerful one-on-one conversation with their leader. And most of those conversations are coaching conversations using this outline. So now we got everyone in the organization all at once being sparked to go up all at the same time, right? Under the spirit of coach and never stop coaching. So that's the outline, guys, and I hope it makes sense to you, and I hope you'll give it a try. It's probably one of the most impactful tools that I put in my leader toolkit, and I hope you'll find great use for it as well. So as I mentioned during our last live, we've got our leadership summits coming up. We have 2 of those coming up in October in Michigan and Wisconsin. And you got it, direct dialogue, compliment, coach, correct is one of the topics we dig into a little bit more during the summit. And it's usually, there's just a plethora of great leadership tactics that you'll learn there. So if you haven't been to a summit or you haven't been to a summit lately, think about joining us in either Wisconsin or in Michigan in October. And there is information on our website, capstoneleadership.net, where you can see all the details about where those events are, what dates they're being held, and what great venues. So hope to see you there, everyone. And if you'd like to book a call with us, capstoneleadership.net. Also, there's a spot there where you could book a call with us. So if you are interested in any of our services like partnership or our greatness course for individual leaders, partnerships for entire organizations, we'd love to talk to you about how we work with individual leaders and how we work with entire organizations to inspire and equip others for positive change. It's what we're all about. We want to make healthcare a great, great, great place to work, and a place where patients just absolutely have an amazing patient experience, and that's both safe and satisfying. So hope to talk to you if you have needs in that area for maybe some change in your individual leadership, some strengthening there, or for your entire department, division, or entire organization. So have a great rest of your week, everyone, and we'll see you next time.